Hello, this week we're going to be painting the white hellebore, and I've got this beautiful little specimen in front of me, so I'm going to be working from life, which is my favourite way to paint. I always like to see the flower right in front of me. I've got it all drawn up, and what I want to do is, because I drew it up quite strong so that you can see it on the photograph, is I want to lose some of that graphite. So I'm going to use some of my blue tack and just roll over it, and that will just lift off the excess graphite. Normally when I'm painting in the studio, I paint with a 2H, I draw with a 2H, and then for the purpose of the projects we need to photograph the drawing, so I use an HB, which lifts off really nicely. So you can see that makes it beautifully ghostly, and that's what you want when you're painting white flowers. So painting white flowers is very difficult on white paper, and what you're looking at is you're looking at the grey tones, the soft shadow colours. And on this hellebore the shadow colours vary from a grey to a sort of green grey to a minty green grey. So there's lots of little puddles of colour that we need to mix up. So let's start doing that. I start with French ultramarine. And make a really big puddle of this. You want a lot because it's a relatively large flower and you don't want to run out. So make a nice big puddle of that. Then you want a smidgen, a little tiny smidgen of Sennelier Yellow Deep. So just tap that very lightly on the yellow. Just keep it really, really soft. That will just turn it to a slightly greeny blue. And then you want an equally small amount of Sennelier Red. Now you can mix this colour with other primary colours, it doesn't have to be these three. So if you've got a lovely sort of letterbox red and a lovely sunshine yellow and a navy blue, then those three will still mix and make this mid-tone colour. So you're looking for a sort of lovely soft grey there. Now I'm going to warm that up. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more yellow because although we've got our mid-tone grey, which is a soft grey, we want to make it slightly warmer for this flower. So I'm just adding a little bit more yellow. It's sort of turning it slightly browny, but not too much. Then I want another little puddle to the side, and I want to make this cooler. So by that I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt blue. So just a tiny little touch. Again, you're barely touching the colours really, because if you have too much, then you end up with having to wipe it away. So there you go. So that's my cool grey. And then I want a very lovely sort of lemony grey. So I'm going to take a little bit more of that mid-tone colour over here and add some lemon yellow. It doesn't matter if they meet and merge, so long as you've got some relative separation there. All of the colours have all come from that main puddle in the middle, so everything sort of hangs together really nicely. And we're going to do the most difficult bit first, which is the petals, and then come onto the stem and the leaves and the bud. And we're going to leave that centre part with all the anthers and the ovaries and what have you, we're going to leave all of that till last because that's quite fiddly. And what's quite nice about this flower is that they're all darker than the petals, so we don't need to mask anything out. So now I'm going to choose which brush to paint with, and I'm going to use the number 6 brush because that's my favourite. And make sure it's nice and woken up and give it a good old clean in the water. Always wake your brushes up because they sort of dry out in the brush holder, and then it's quite nice to sort of just wake them up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water on 1 or 2 of the petals, and I'm going to work quite quickly because you want to just drop in all those lovely soft greys. So let's start with this tricky one on the corner here. There's quite a lot of light on there. What I want to do is I want to just put the water on first, very gently up to the edges. And rather than put a lot on there, I'm just going to put a quick flick on and then just mop up. And then go back to my palette and stir up the greys that I think I'm going to need. And I think I'll use some of that mid-tone. So give that a little stir. It's really important that you stir these greys before you use them because a couple of the colours will have a little argument on the palette and you'll get that separation. It looks a bit like petrol in a puddle. So once you've got your colour, just pick it up and just twist it so that the point of your brush is nice and twisted together. And by that time that water will have settled in and you can get a nice soft delivery of grey. So I'm just going to put that on there. Oh, I haven't got enough on there. Just drop that colour into the back there. When I'm painting and looking at my live study, I tend to close one eye. It gives me a much flatter look to what I'm painting. So what I've done here is I've just dropped in a little bit of that grey, and because there's some light through the back of this petal, I'm going to mop while that settles to keep that light on the front part of the fold. It's very subtle. If you go too grey, you'll end up with a big grey flower, so keep it subtle. You can always go darker, but it's very difficult to go much lighter. So I put that little bit of grey on, and then I'm going to just tap on a little bit at the top, just there on that little fold. And then while the glaze is there, I'm going to put a little bit on this leading edge, just where that curls round. It's a little bit of grey on that leading edge. So you can see I'm just using the very tip of the brush. It's a very gentle delivery of paint. And as that's settled now, I can drop in a little bit more shadow down there. So we're getting the idea of a pleat occurring on this flower, on this petal rather. Just mop. Keeping your highlights by mopping with a clean damp brush, not a wet one, a damp brush. Now we can work on this petal while that one's settling, so let's do that. So drop the water in here. As I say, I'm not worried about all the stamen because they're much darker than the petals. So the main thing is to get the glaze on the petal. It's funny how people love the idea of painting white flowers, and once you've got the idea of mixing all these lovely mid-tones, you'll find it much easier. And obviously the white of the petal is what is the paper, so it's what you leave out that's important. Now this is a whole combination of greys on this petal, so I'm going to pick up my main grey, really scoop that up, and I'm going to put that through here. Just going to drop it on there. Just let that move around and settle. And then I'm going to drop some more down here. You'll see that I'm depleting my reservoir of grey. You do use an awful lot. So I'm just slow that brush down there, get a nice edge. And there's a little bit of grey just at the top there, which I want there. So I put all that heavy grey on. Now what I want to do is just maintain my highlights, the white part of the petal. So I'm cleaning the brush, taking the water out and mopping the light. You have to just be very methodical about this. Don't panic, just move the brush very gently and use it like a mop, and mop up the paint that's spreading into the light. Just very gently, keep mopping. The paint's very wet, the paper's very wet, so everything's moving around and settling, and what you're trying to do is just stop it settling where you don't want it. This area here is drying quite nicely, so I'm not going to fiddle with that. All I'm going to do is just take a little corner of light out here. Just a small amount of light. I don't want it to be bright white because it's still quite grey, but it's not as grey as everywhere else. That's good. So that's my first little application of grey on there. There are other greys on there, it's more greeny grey, but I'm going to let that dry first because that's going to be the structure of my petal. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I will use this greeny grey to just map in the bud. I just want to get that lovely greeny grey first glaze on that. So let's just drop some water over the bud. It's quite a gloomy day today, so the shadows are very strong. but also it's quite hard to see the details, so you have to really concentrate. Right, I've picked up all of that green grey, filled my brush up, and now what I want to do is I want to just drop that in. Oh, my brush has gone a bit crazy. Just drop that in as an overall glaze there. Just gets it established on the paper, and that's all we need at the moment for that. And just mop out perhaps just a little bit of light right on the top that's coming in from the window. Okay, so once my petals have dried on my flower, I'm going to map in the rest of the petals the same way, and we'll put that to music.